Well, we got our first chance to talk to all of the UCF staff. What did we learn this week, and what are we looking forward to for spring practices? Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Charge On. As always, I'm your host, Sean Green. Before we get started, a quick word from our sponsor, BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the large selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to the NHL and UFC, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. For those watching on audio, yes, I am wearing a hat with a polo. I maybe nobody would have cared, but it's been one of those days. Happy Saturday. I'm coming to you on Saturday. It's been a week. Very busy, but figured I'd get something out to you guys because we've been doing the 2 episodes a week. At some point, that's going to end here in the next month or so. But today, again, we were supposed to do an episode yesterday and release an episode yesterday, but a lot of issues arose. I was at Media Day, I think at the Wednesday. It was Wednesday, I believe, and got a lot of good content there, but downloading that content was interesting, and the quality of the content. So decided we would do kind of a hybrid, if you will, episode of just my thoughts on what I heard specifically, and I'm going to play a couple clips from some of the coaches that I talked to. I talked to basically every coach at Media Day, or the coaches availability. But here was kind of my initial thoughts before we go into some of the questions that I asked and stuff like that. But there was a clear-cut message throughout the media availability when you talked about, like, one of my big questions that I asked almost every single coach was, what to them would be a positive spring? Like, if they got to the end of spring ball, what would be this was a really positive spring and we got a lot accomplished? Like, what would that look like? And usually a lot of coaches get the same cliche answer of like, oh, we're going to take it one day at a time. But I think when you ask the coaches this question, and I'm going to play Scott Frost's answer on that question in a second, but it was very much trying to form an identity, and if we get from point A to point B with everything that's gone on, I think we'll have a really strong chance at a positive spring. And Scott Frost talked about it multiple times, how it's been a crazy month, how, they think they got the right guys in here and they got a bunch of guys. And Scott Frost even talked about that already. He's already liked the way that the guys are working and pushing themselves, and going up to him and saying that they appreciate the coaching this early, and that Scott Frost says they're not holding back, especially in the weight room right now. They are pushing these guys as much as they can. And I think with a lot of these coaches, it's brand new. Scott Frost mentioned that he could have went out and hired a bunch of the guys that he knew, and the only guys that he knew on the staff. And we talked about that on the last episode, how he really did switch it up. There's a lot of guys that he didn't know that he hired. And I think that kind of permeates throughout the staff, where it's a lot of learning each other and learning how to work together, but also a feeling that there is something special and they want to be able to emulate and bring something to the table that helps Scott Frost's vision. Before we get any further, let me play the question that I asked Coach Frost on Wednesday about what a positive spring would look like for him and the Knights.
Well, spring's about competition for me. Teaching for us from a coach's standpoint, and then competition for the kids. And, the quicker guys learn, the better chance they have of being successful on the field. And as much as we're competing with one another, I want it to be a team-based mentality, so guys are caring about each other. And, that's a hard thing to balance, so that's going to take good leadership, good communication from the coaching staff. And, we're not really sure what we have yet until we get them out on the field and see, so it's hard to answer questions about personnel. But the guys are going to get a chance to prove that. And like I said, I've been really impressed with the work ethic and the attentiveness to try to learn things and move this in a positive direction.
So that was Scott Frost. It was a lot of people there, obviously. Went for 26 minutes. And I'll say he's sounding the same with a lot of the questions that he's asked. And let's be real here. I mean, there's not many different questions we can ask right now. We got to ask, I think Brand Helwig asked about Grinch and him being the new DC and kind of what led into that. And that was an interesting answer. He kind of talked about KZ, which he's kind of given the same answer on KZ, where he thinks he's a good coach. And I do agree with the UCF fans. I think they're going to need to. Obviously, McKenzie Milton is loved by UCF fans, but I think the switch from quarterback to coach is going to be something that UCF fans are going to need to get used to. But really loved the way that Scott Frost handled this presser, and he gave, I think, really good answers to make you excited for the way that this spring ball is going to go and the way that they're going about it. They know that this is a 4-8 football team that was permeated again throughout the entire media availability session from all the coaches, is that we are starting from ground zero. Like, we have a bunch of new players. We're trying to get them all integrated into what we're trying to do. And that was permeated. So I think Scott Frost's portion was really good. Let's go to Alex Grinch. It was definitely the one hire that many people did not like. Not just UCF fans, but around the country. Me and Stephen Leonard, want to give a shout out to Stephen Leonard. Me and him kind of went to all the coaches together. We tag teamed all of the coaching interviews. I was going to play all of the coaching interviews, but it doesn't work out that way. So I'm going to set up certain clips. So we were there with Alex Grinch, along with Andrew Cherico from the Sons of UCF. We were interviewing the new defensive coordinator. And again, I asked a question about, you'll hear my question, but I wanted to know what the difference was in his coaching philosophies these last couple of years after leaving Oklahoma and leaving USC, ultimately getting fired at USC. But if his philosophies have changed, and he gave a really long answer, but he did say something interesting at the end that may be a cause for concern, but also maybe not. Take a look. How do you feel your defensive philosophy has changed since being at USC and even Oklahoma over these last couple of years?
Yeah, I think it's ever evolving based on what is done in football. I mean, formationally, as much as anything over the course of time, the multiplicity of offenses. It's hard now to watch too much football without seeing someone go in motion. Maybe 10 years ago, something like that, where that was kind of the exception. It's now. Again, something that's almost expected, and if they don't move, then you're kind of, I don't want to say lucky, but it's not normal. It's the same thing. I think there's a little bit of the spread / tempo that went up maybe to the NFL. The thing that's maybe coming back, again, everybody kind of mimics each other, but the one thing that's coming into the college ranks is just the formations, the use of tight ends, the shifting, the motioning. Which is, can put you in a real bind defensively. And so I think probably as much as anything, and then included in that the previous, like I mentioned in college football, with the tempo piece. And so now you got kind of a really a merging of that, which is painstaking defensively, that you spend so much time just getting lined up. But philosophically, it's always been about playing downhill football. It's always been about, I think we've averaged 33 sacks a year, 90 TFLs, 21 takeaways a year. That never goes away. Being disruptive and getting offenses behind the chains, and like I said, probably as much as anything, just making sure that you can structure yourself so that before the ball is snapped, you can get your feet in your cleats in the grass and get lined up and allow the guys to go play downhill.
Yeah, so that was Alex Grinch talking about his different philosophies and kind of the way the game has evolved, especially on the offensive end. And I really appreciated the answer. We did a 12-minute interview with him. And I give him a lot of credit for the way that he really gives thorough and thought out answers. I think when he was bringing up the average like takeaways and sacks and TFLs and stuff like that, it definitely was a I think a little bit of a, like, not so much I know all the heat I get and I know all the negatives around my name, so let me like throw this out there to like just show and say what my philosophy is, because I wanted to know, like, was there any changes in his thought process that made it, like, I know he usually goes 3-3-5, and I think they might be going 4 and 4 on the defensive line, which is definitely a good potential shift. So that is something to look at and say how much, because again, Alex Grinch is very aggressive, to his credit and also not to his credit. So how much of that is going to permeate? I've been saying permeate a lot, so I'm going to not say that, even though I just said it, but how much is that going to kind of come over to UCF this time around when he's now here and running this defense? How much of his old defensive schemes and the way he runs defense is going to come over to the Knights, or is it going to be more of a change in the way that he does things after going, I think, taking really a break from being the main signal caller? So it's something that we'll need to watch out for, and I'm definitely very interested in it. I wanted to play this quick McKenzie Milton clip. Didn't really get a chance to talk to KZ. We were kind of focused on getting solo interviews around, and we kind of hit KZ last, and the session ended. But he answered this one question about, and I think it definitely is something that we've heard Frost talk about, we've heard KZ talk about, and it's kind of the fact that not so much it's a coaching philosophy that football's important, but it's not the most important. I thought it was just a really well answered question. There was a lot of people there, so there's a lot of McKenzie Milton interviews up on YouTube right now. I'm sure you can search it if you want to see a full length interview. But I did cut this. I was in the scrum. I caught this question. I figured I would share it with you. So here's KZ at Media Day.
Yeah, like I said earlier, just I used to think football was everything, and it's still a big part of my life because, you know, it's my profession. But at some point, this game's going to end for these guys, for everybody. I'll stop coaching at some point, and really is, what fruit do you want your life to bear? Is it you threw a bunch of touchdowns, or you poured into the people around you to help them get to where they wanted to go? And for me, that starts, one, with my family, and then two, you know, with the guys that I'm coaching up in the locker room.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate y'all.
Coach.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, just a really good answer to the question, and he's really well spoken, obviously. So I'm excited to see what he can do again with the quarterbacks. That is something we're going to be watching and keeping an eye on. But yeah, I'm really excited to see what he could do moving forward. All right, Sean Beckton, a lot of UCF fan favorite, obviously. I think he's obviously followed Scott Frost wherever he's gone. Nebraska, now here. Even before Nebraska, he was here. Played for UCF, one of the greatest receivers in UCF history. Me and Steven got to sit down with him, and he can talk. And I appreciate when the coach is actually talking, and I think everybody on the coaching staff really gave well thought out answers. So I really did appreciate it. But I frankly wanted to ask about the Burdell Richardson of it all. And I included my question in the clip I'm about to show, but he was on staff last year in a role, and Burdell Richardson was a name that we continued to hear about and continued to hear that he was doing really good things, but he never got on the field. So I kind of asked Coach Beckton about that and what he needs to do to kind of see the field. And this was, again, another longer interview. This was just the clip I thought was most prominent because he does give a little tidbits here and there. So here is Coach Beckton on Burdell Richardson and the young receivers moving forward. Obviously, Burdell Richardson was a name that a lot of people were hearing out of the building because players were speaking of him so highly and of the plays he was making last season, but didn't get to go on the field. What has been the biggest challenge, and what have you been preaching to him about taking this next step for his sophomore redshirt freshman year?
Well, really with all of them, Burdell and the rest of the young guys, they all thought they were ready to play on this level, and it takes a lot more. Even on scout team last year, I didn't think they all worked hard. That's some of the attributes I'm trying to drive into them right now. You got to work hard. That's number one. You got to spend a little bit extra time. Number two, with this game, it's just not going to happen. In a short amount of time that we give you, the NCAA gives you. So, and I've seen some progress with Riddell and the rest of those guys. They've spending some extra time and they're working a lot harder. Are they where I want them to be? No, right now, no, that they're not. But there's some positive signs there. That the biggest thing for me is being able to get some senior leadership around those young guys to be able to show, how it needs to be done. Once those guys start seeing, some of the DJ Blacks and Dante, Dwayne Thomas, some of those guys that's been in other programs, Marcus Burke, kind of show those young guys how they need to work. That's really been a big help.
Yeah, that was Coach Beckton, and he said a lot there. A lot that you can read between the lines, a lot you can't, but he was very forthcoming about what the reason was, and it was maturity. And I think what I am excited for is Coach Frost already said that a lot of the guys have come up and said that they appreciate the coaching, they appreciate the toughness, they want that. And when it comes to the receiving group, receiver room, to hear that, it does make you question and be like, okay, how many of those young guys are ready to take that next step? He says he doesn't believe they're there yet, that he thinks they weren't going 100% on scout team or whatever they were doing. And I think that's an issue with a lot of young receivers. They probably come in, think they're going to be the guy, and they don't get the opportunities. Now, to the Burdell Richardson of it all, I do think there's a little bit of a question mark. Like, everybody was talking about the plays Burdell Richardson was making in spring and in the fall, and then he just didn't get an opportunity. So if you didn't think he was better than the guys on the field, okay. If it's a maturity thing, I also understand that. But I think for these young guys to have Coach Beckton leading that room, and if they really truly listen, I think they'll get the opportunity. Now, Coach Beckton also mentioned bringing in that senior leadership, and he mentioned guys like DJ Back, Dwayne Thomas, so there is, I'm not going to say a little bit of are those your starting guys, because the coach has also made it very clear whenever you asked about personnel that they are just starting to even get around these guys, let alone have any thought process on anything like that. Every time they made it perfectly clear. But it is something to note that when he mentioned about bringing the senior leadership in to kind of teach the young guys the way to do it, he mentioned 3 guys specifically. So I think there is probably a little bit of in a perfect scenario, you play the 3 seniors as you're starting this year, and then the young guys learn enough to where next year is kind of their time. That's kind of how I took it. But again, at the same time, the coaches made it very, very clear that they haven't even really started spring practice yet. It's really just been workouts and meetings and stuff like that. So just something to throw out there about the receiver room. All right, let's go to the defense again. To close out, we got 2 defensive coaches. We had a lot more. We talked to a lot more coaches, but we're going to kind of sprinkle those in here and there where we see fit. But Kenny Martin is back on staff. We talked to him briefly, and I said he's honestly, I told him this, probably my favorite coach on staff last year, just in terms of he's been the best recruiter, or one of the best recruiters for UCF for a while now. And you can tell that his players love him. You can tell that he coaches his butt off. The defensive line has not been the problem. And usually the guys that he recruits and the guys that he develops develop pretty well. So hearing him talk about kind of being able to stay on staff and what that means, heard a couple names that he's excited about. Derek LeBlanc being one of them, which I know a lot of UCF fans know. He talked glowingly about the strides that LeBlanc has made. I think he said he's at 305 right now, which is massive. Here's Kenny Martin giving his thoughts on, again, what he's looking for out of spring ball and what he wants to see this team do at the end of spring. What he wants out of it compared to some of the other springs he's been a part of with UCF.
And to be honest, I really think we got a lot of good pieces with us right now, man. And one thing about it, these guys have come and worked every single day. It's been exciting to watch from afar. We're just starting to put our hands on them to get into the schematics of things, man, and we're excited about it. But I know interior-wise, D-tackle-wise, I just want to see those guys take steps every single day to get better, right, and chase greatness, all right, not mediocrity.
Again, we love Kenny Martin. He's going to do a hell of a job, and he's still doing a hell of a job recruiting, so we are excited to see what he can do staying on the UCF staff. Final one we're going to talk about today is Brandon Harris, the new cornerback DB coach, if you will. I told you, this was probably, in terms of coaching hires, this was my favorite in terms of new guys coming in. You lose a bunch of important guys. Addison Williams, Trovon Reed were very important in the DB space. They were going after some big hitters. And I thought losing those guys was massive in terms of the recruiting aspect. But you bring in a guy like Brandon Harris, brother of Tim Harris Jr., and Brandon was really great to talk to, like I said, about all the coaches. But I asked him about his recruiting philosophy, and he's recruited in the state. It's all he's really recruited. And what his thought process is going after the top guys. Like I said, there's a lot of guys that have already said that they want to play for you. It's already some of the top guys. What's your philosophy and who are you looking for to kind of join? And what is your recruiting style? So here's his answer on that.
I think in this position, man, you got to do a really good job at you got to have traits that you're looking for, and you got to make sure that they're aligned with what you guys want to do defensively. I think that's very important because this is a fragile position when it comes to recruiting and when it comes to immediate impact. I mean, and I think that's the one experience I have being a highly rated defensive back coming out of this state, being one of the most highly recruited guys in the country, and going to a big program and struggling as a freshman, and just understanding from those experiences why I struggled and how I got better from that, and how I was able to make a huge jump from a freshman to a sophomore, and how important that development is. So I think it's guys that, like I said, believe in us. Guys that believe that we can develop them, guys that believe that we have the right tools in our toolbox to educate them to get better. So when we go out and recruiting, it's not going to be a matter of looking for the most highly rated guys or looking for the guys that has all the national attention. We're going to look for those little things that we know we can coach, and the guys that really want to play for us, and the guys that have that ability in them to say, we believe in this program, we believe in Coach Grinch, we believe in Coach Harris, and those guys are going to do a great job at recruiting us. So, I mean, we're going to be ground level. We're going to do a good job at building relationships, but also make sure we're turning every stone in every high school. So, I mean, I don't mean to offend anybody, but we're going to recruit the best players that fits our scheme and our program. So, regardless of rankings, regardless of ratings, we're going to make sure we get good players in.
Yeah, I gave a really great answer. And again, I'm really excited to see the development. There's a lot of new DBs joining the team. So it is going to be the way he's going to be great is on those young guys. Can he really develop those young guys? I think that's something that we've seen, but we also haven't in some cases. Chasen Johnson, his name comes to mind, right? Like, can Chasen take that next step? He developed a lot last year. But there's still a lot of guys that have been recruited for UCF and are on the roster that we haven't really seen and have high potential. So excited to see what he can do. And again, I think in terms of getting those 4-star guys, I think the two names on this staff that you can feel confident are going to go after those kind of high-end 4-stars is Kenny Martin and Brandon Harris. I think those are the two names that right now you look at as your best recruiters on staff at the moment. But it's all up for debate. We'll see in the coming months who's kind of taking visits to UCF, and especially on the offensive side, and who's really interested. I think those are going to be the focal points moving forward. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for Charge On. Thank you so much. Again, sorry for not posting on Friday. I'm sure you guys are okay with it. You get a little weekend episode. Enjoy your extra weekend, with President's Day on Monday. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, do all that you do. We greatly appreciate it. Let us know down below. What did you think of media availability? I know there's a lot of videos out there. That's kind of why I didn't want to cut together an hour-long video of all the interviews we did. I kind of just want to pick some spots for you to take in some answers. But let us know what you think down below with spring practice starting just in a couple weeks. So we're going to be hearing a lot more from the coaches and the players here at the beginning of March. All right, everybody, this has been Charge On Ep.178 Bet Online. We will see you next week.